Namaste, and good evening, everyone. Shraddha Praya Vibhaga Yogam. That is the differentiation of the three types of Shraddha. In fact, I think in English, we have generally everyone uses the term faith to translate the term Shraddha. But I believe that there is no replacement for the word Shraddha. So even though we have used the term faith, we should actually be looking at the depth of that word Shraddha, and we are going to, in this chapter, see the various aspects of Shraddha from Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic angles, and that will definitely, it is going to help us to decide what kind of a person that each one of us is. So our mental fabric of Shraddha is analytically described here by Krishna, and I think that is also going to be of practical help for us to decide how we lead our life, acquiring knowledge and practicing that knowledge, and ultimately identifying with that knowledge. So Shraddha is that process of connecting with knowledge through our systems of belief, so that our belief is strengthened by knowledge, and it becomes, you can call as Shraddha. Shraddha, therefore, is a characteristic of the mind that is required for you to really get to know something and to connect with it. So we have been talking about in Bhagavad-Gita, the Gita intelligence, we have been talking about the infinite self as our own self. There is only one self, and that is that one, the Brahman, that is right within each one of us, and therefore there is no differentiation between our real identities, even though our physical identities are different. There are millions and billions of individuals, billions of human beings, as well as trillions of other kinds of species, each one tapping this infinite Brahman and expressing itself, the glorious varieties of nature. But the identity that each one of us carry is that of the infinite self. And we call that in individuals as the Atman. When that infinitude is residing within each individual bodies, or apparently seen as residing in individual bodies, it is called as Atman. It is a seamless existence of the infinitude, really, in the different bodies, and including even non-living entities, moving, immovable, living, non-living. Everything is actually existing in this universe because of the infinitude, the Brahman. They are all different manifestations of the Brahman. Just like when you keep different pots of water in direct sunlight, you can see the sun reflected in each one of them separately. They are not different. It is the same sun that is reflecting in every utensil. So likewise, the Brahman is reflecting in each one of us. When it is reflecting, it's showing different characteristics because of the container, because of the different physical entities that we all are. That is all. So ultimately, as human beings, with the power of mind to help us, the power of mind and intellect to help us to connect with that real nature of the infinitude, the knowledge of the self, it becomes the path to perfection in terms of understanding the self, connecting with the self, and always existing in the self. That is the path to perfection that Bhagavad-Gita talks to us. So when we look at that, the infinitude, each one of us identifying the infinitude is a kind of utopia. That is what all of us think. It may be true in terms of the physical manifestations that we are able to bring out of this infinitude. But the belief that is strengthened by knowledge of the self. It is not just blind belief. It is about believing in the self by understanding what the self is. And that is what Gita has been telling us for the last 16 chapters, and is going to be rooted now in the ultimate characteristics of the mind that will help you to be really connected with the self, the faith or the Shraddha. And that Shraddha, if you are able to engage in life with that Shraddha, the Sattvic Shraddha that we are going to be shown here, that Sattvic Shraddha will enable you to reach out to perfection and keep on reaching, keep on pursuing the path of perfection. And for that, as a summary, if you look at, we have had 3 yogas defined in Gita, Bhagavad-Gita, and that is the Karma Yoga, the first 6 chapters, Bhakti Yoga in the next 6 chapters, and finally refining all this with the knowledge, the Jnana Yoga, from chapter 13 to 18, of which we are now in the 17th chapter. It is all easily said than done. Why is it so difficult to practice this? Is because of the characteristics of the mind. The mind is always running after pleasures. Because the mind and the intellect is situated or positioned within this container of the body, mind, and intellect, and giving life to the BMI. The main characteristics of the mind and the senses is that it always wants to reach a state of happiness. Every one of us actually want happiness. Nobody is striving for sorrows or difficulties. Everyone wants happiness. That is because the real nature of the self is happiness. Self is happiness. And it is always striving for happiness when it is expressing through a medium. So the BMI is always striving for happiness. And the problem now is, because the mind is striving for happiness, it is looking for outward happiness. It projects itself to the outside world and tries to get happiness from the physical things that it gets connected to, rather than the driver of its life, that is the Atman, the self. That is what is happening. So, because the mind is oriented towards happiness from outside the gross world, the physical material world, lust, anger, and greed becomes the friends of the mind. So, in practical essence, the path to perfection, as exemplified by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad-Gita, the music of the divine, the reducing the lust, greed, and anger is basically what is required. Reducing lust, anger, and greed is basically what is required. So how can you do that? To reduce your lust, greed, and anger, we need to act in such ways, or we need to engage in action in this world such that our motivations are pure. Our motivations are driven by the happiness of the joys of the self, rather than by the happiness of the pleasures of the senses. So, the Gita starts in the 2nd chapter itself with defining the motivations to act in this world, or throwing pointers to what the motivations should be, the supreme motivations, the joys of the self. So basically, the motivations or the joys for the joys of the self, motivations for the joys of the self is a prime driver that should be driving us, impetus for every action. The impetus for every action should be the joys of the self. When that is so, then the next step is to refine our attitude towards work, basically about understanding and appreciating a sense of duty in carrying out our duties, thereby shaping our attitudes, and thereby refining our aptitudes and building fortitude, such that the mind is totally focused on the joys of the self. and not the lust, anger, and satisfying the lust, anger, and greed in pursuit of outside pleasures. So once we achieve that through Karma Yoga, we can then start connecting with the self, understanding the self, and build up self-belief through understanding the universality of the self, the imperishability of the self, and the infinitude of the self, which is what 7th, 8th, and 9th chapter described, such that we are able to develop a multi-dimensional perspective by looking at the various manifestations of the self in the outside world. We can actually start seeing the whole world outside itself as manifestations of the infinite self. So connecting with the outside elements, not just for pleasures, but with the understanding that they are all manifestations of the self, is what this multidimensional perspective is, and which is what basically giving us the holistic vision as exemplified by the Vishwarupa Darshanam in the 11th chapter. So this kind of a mental refinement process, refining your lust, greed, and anger to direct towards the self instead of the outsider objects of pleasure. So if we are able to direct the extreme passion for self, or extreme passion towards the self, passion for the joys of the self, and getting angry if that is not possible, so anger towards fulfilling this passion for self, and greed, and keeping on always striving to enjoy the joys of self. So refining your lust, anger, and greed is about directing your focus, complete belief and focus, on to the self rather than to the outside objects. So that's basically what it is. It is all about turning your outward attention towards inner self. That is bhakti, the bhakti yoga. Turning your attention from the outside world to your own inner self is basically what is called as bhakti. So, having lust and being angry if not possible, and greed for the joys of the self is bhakti, or devotion, which is exemplified through chapters 7 to 12. And thereafter, the finer aspects of understanding your inner nature, sattva, rajas, tamo gunas, and also understanding self and not self. All those details were given out in chapter 13 and chapter 14, and ultimately summarizing the path of perfection in chapter 15, so that we can identify with that absolute personality, the supreme personality, which is the Purushottama. So we identify ourselves with Purushottama. That is basically what Bhagavad-Gita's net knowledge is all about, and that is what was summarized in chapter 15. But three more chapters were later added, 16, 17, and 18. 16th talking about the Devasura Sampath, the divine and the devilish nature that we discussed last week. And today we are going to discuss the three types of Shraddha that we bring about in our day-to-day interactions in life. In the transactions of our life, how do you actually bring about a kind of faith or Shraddha, which is sattvic? So we need to understand what is sattvic Shraddha, what is rajasic Shraddha, and what is tamasic Shraddha. That is basically what here we are going to discuss. It is a very reasonably straightforward chapter, but I am going to spend some time on some practical aspects also in this today's session. Maybe the focus will be on describing some examples in practical, especially in the outside world, in our world of professions, etc. So because we have seen Shraddha, we can actually see Shraddha, how it is applied to spiritual life, because we can get so much of discourses in the outside world around that subject. But how Shraddha applies to our day-to-day living in leading a life and living such that it is a life of devotion. It is a life of karma yoga. It is a life of devotion. And it is a life of knowledge in the outside world, in everything that you do in the outside world, in families, in societies, in professional workplaces, etc. So to connect to that, I'll spend some time on some practical aspects, not whole, so many things can be discussed, but I will select a couple of instances and then connect everyone with this knowledge with that application in life. So, shaping your faith or shaping your Shraddha. All of us have heard about quality systems. Quality systems, you look at, in various kinds of applications in life, in the manufacturing of commodities, in the design and implementation of products, in projects, even in life processes, etc., procedures, living procedures, etc. We come up with quality systems. In fact, if you look at the way this computer that you are using, or the mobile phone that you are using has been produced, there is a quality process that the manufacturer makes it follow, such that the production becomes, enriched in quality, and therefore what you get in your hand is a reliable device. So quality systems are for this outside world, products and artifacts of the outside world. Similarly, we have the scriptures like Bhagavad-Gita, Upanishads, etc. The scriptures. Scriptures are standards for a life. So, in a simple definitional parlance, we can talk about quality systems or standards for products and services in living is called as quality systems, and standards for life is called as scriptures. So standards for living is quality systems, and standards for life are called our scriptures. So we should understand that the Bhagavad-Gita is a standard for life. How you actually conduct your life and therefore your living in this world in the right manner. So we have, the scriptures which have come from our forefathers, handed down from rishis, across generations and across thousands of years it has come to us. It defines what is good and what is bad, and what is to be done and what is not to be done in social and community living. So to lead your life, you call them scriptures. The scriptures therefore highlight the dharma of a human being. They tell you why we are human. What makes you a human? If you remember, we discussed these things in chapter 7, the dharma of a human being, chapter 4 also in dharma of a human being. They place before you the right ways of living in this world through the process of thinking. They increase the standard of life. So quality in outward products and services increases our quality of living, whereas this, if we are able to understand and practice, increases the quality of life, the standard of life, standard of living and standard of life. Standard of living alone may not be what is desired, because it will create imbalances in life. If we can dovetail standard of living with standard of life, that is when we have a robust and happy living, a full life of fulfillment. So it is for that these scriptures have come about, and we need to believe and have complete faith in the processes actually given out in the scriptures. So we have seen lots of patterns of sustainable happiness and living through the Bhagavad-Gita. We should, if we want to follow it and live a life of fulfillment, then we need to have complete confidence in this knowledge. And that complete confidence in knowledge accrues because of understanding what it is all about, the knowledge of these processes. So our beliefs will turn into Shraddha only when we actually infuse our mind with the knowledge necessary to understand these processes and procedures laid out by Krishna as given to Arjuna. knowledge-based belief. That is what Shraddha is. Knowledge-based belief. You believe in something. Why? You should be able to understand why. You should be able to appreciate the why of it. When you have that, that means you have understood this knowledge. And that knowledge-based belief then is stronger than mere belief. And that is called as Shraddha. Now, what is happening is, our belief is powered by three gunas: Sattva guna, Rajo guna, and Tamo guna. That is what we have seen. All our beliefs are influenced by Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic tendencies. And it results in some kind of an action in the outside world. So, over time, you keep repeating your belief into actions, keep on, engaging in action in the way, in the world with some kind of a belief. Over time, it becomes your nature. You become, let's, for example, you keep robbing a bank and succeed in the first attempt, and you keep on doing that. Ultimately, your nature becomes, a bank dacoit or something, whatever like that. So it is repeated through repeated action in your own belief systems and the actions that you engage in because of that, and that makes your nature. Why? We'll see a little bit of it later on in what is happening inside the brain also, as we connect with some of the practical applications. But at the moment, we'll go forward. So over time, it becomes nature. Now, let us look at the Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic potentials. The productive potentials that are within us, capable of making us do things productively in this world, is called as divine powers within. Your skills and capabilities. That makes us productive and creative in this world in a cooperative manner, and that too in a very cooperative manner for coexistence and expansion. That is divine. That power is divine, and that is called as Sattvic. Greed, conceit, power, anger, and fear, instead of that, becomes the rulers and demons that reside inside us. They are other kind of qualities like greed, anger, etc., fear, etc., which are called as rulers and demons that reside inside us, shaping the way we behave selfishly in our actions. And laziness, evilness, and stupidity are the ghosts and spirits that influence our ignorant ways of interacting in this world. So these are the three ways in which we have the powers that make us selflessly productive, selfishly productive, or selfishly destructive. So, selflessly productive people worship productive potentials, Devan. They worship the Devas. Selfless productive people worship the selfish gains. They are the Asuras. And selfishly destructive people worship gains at the cost of others. And that they becomes the Rakshasas. So Sattvic faith that leads us to be selflessly productive is the engine for giving us happiness, peace, and harmony. Rajasic faith results in sorrow, tension, and distrust. Whereas Tamasic faith results in ignorance, destruction, and chaotic order. So what is really required is to have the Sattvic faith driving our nature. Selfless productivity driving our nature so that we become Devas. So those who work against their conscience, caring only for the immediate pleasures of the body, mind, and intellect, and therefore they do not care for the joys of the self, they are the ignorant and demonic people. They are meticulous, persistent, and hardworking in their pursuit of happiness in the outside world, sensual pleasures. They are hypocrites and they are driven by egotism and conceit. Now, this happens because of inputs into the system. Why do we become these Rakshasas and Asuras? Is because of the type of things that we consume. So, Krishna is now going to describe the faith or the Shraddha in that the Shraddha that we need to bring in to the consumption of inputs from the outside world. Consumption of input from the outside world, which in general is called as food. So, Krishna is now going to talk about the three types of food that we consume. So, don't think that this food is only those items that we actually take in through the mouth. It is not. He is generally talking about three types of food. The food are the kind of things that we take from the outside world through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the skin, and all the senses. So, food. Now, in general, initially, the characteristic of or the functioning of food is described. Anything that we take through the mouth, the things that we eat, or through the eye, the things that we see and enjoy, hear and enjoy through the ears, etc. They can be three: gross, subtle, and subtlest. What is happening is the things that we take, the gross things that we take, physically gross, things that we take from the outside world and eat are not used. I mean, in the sense they are excreted out. They are purged from our system. Gross things are purged from our system. Subtle things, that is the vitamins, the enzymes, and all those things in terms of the food that we eat. Or similarly, you can think about what are these subtle things when we actually consume information through the visual means, through oral means, etc. The subtle means strengthens the skins, bones, and the flesh. They provide the health for the physical being. And the subtlest is the power of mind, how it affects the mind, so that it affects the thinking. So food affects your thinking, food affects your physical nourishment and health, and food that is not used in either of these is excreted out. So these three types of food can be actually effective within our body in these ways. Now let us look at sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic food, the nature that is described in verses 8, 9, and 10. 3 verses describing the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic respectively. So I have just listed out what is written there in English language here, listed out the characteristics defined. I will be posting this so you can study this later. At the moment, we'll quickly go through it. Food that promotes longevity, virtues, strength, health, cheerfulness, joy, oleousness, substantive, and agreeability. In general, a positive, healthy, health within us. That is sattvic. In general, they are juicy, watery, smooth, substantial, lasting. It gives us sustainable health and nutritious. So anything that gives this is sattvic food. There is no other differentiation talked about in Bhagavad-Gita. The characteristics are what is described of food. What type of food do you eat is not listed out, because then it becomes specific, isn't it? So here, since this knowledge is applicable to everyone across caste, creed, and color, geographies, it is general. So that general abstract qualities is basically what is described. Now, rajasic food are bitter, sour, salty, excessively hot, pungent, dry, and burning kind of things are rajasic. They cause pain, grief, and disease. it is not just about things that we eat also. You just try to equate this to, let's say, the language with which you actually, you hear, let's say, the language you take in from someone else who is speaking to you. Bitter language, sour language, salty language, excessively hot language, you can equate that to these qualities. That is rajasic. Similarly, you can also do the same thing to others. You can talk. You can actually give a dry smile. Rajasic smile, it is dry. People can connect with that and understand that, okay, it is dry. Your language was very excessively hot, in the sense, angry, and they cause pain, grief, and disease. So rajasic inputs. Tamasic food are stale, tasteless, putrid, rotten, refuse. It is a kind of refuse and impure. You can, what you hear, stale news, for example, or tasteless ways of, expressing your opinion. So all those things are actually tamasic food that create problems in this world. Okay, so then Krishna went on to describe the 3 types of worship or sacrifice, yajna. 3 types of worship that we perform. Selfless service, which are described in the scriptures, like Bhagavad-Gita, and performed without any desire for the results thereof, with the belief that it is, my duty and therefore I am doing it, is sattvic. So karma yoga is sattvic. Yajna, karma yoga is yajna. Karma yoga is sacrifice, sattvic yajna. We have seen all the aspects of karma yoga in the first 6 chapters. Now, selfless service that is performed only for the show and aiming for results is in the mode of rajas. Suppose we are doing selfless, you are doing service, good things. Why? Because I want to become famous. I want to become, noticed. I want to be, I want to gain something out of it with a desire for the results. And also, showing opulence and wealth to impress other people. Vanity and sense of power. That is rajasic. Rajasic yajna. Tamasic yajna, on the other hand, are contrary to scriptural injunctions. You go against what is told. That is performed without following the scripture, in which nothing is actually provided to others. No food is distributed, which is devoid of higher goals. It is said to be in the mode of ignorance. No faith, no methodologies. That is tamas. So tamasic way of doing things, selfless service. Now, Krishna goes on to describe austerity. What is austerity in verses 14, 15, and 16? The means of what is austerity in general, Upanishads define austerity as the means of fine-tuning our body, mind, and intellect to maximize their performance is termed as austerity. The means of fine-tuning the body, mind to maximize their performance. It can be negatively or it can even be positively. So, even evil people, they do bad things through a process of austerity, of, excelling in what they are doing. So, if this is a general definition, but Bhagavad-Gita tells us that our austerity is to be aimed towards selflessness. The means of fine-tuning the body and mind to maximize their performance is termed as austerity or tapas. Austerity in Sanskrit, tapas. So austerity implies the following. So that is described in this 14, 15, and 17. Capacity to endurance towards higher goals. When you are going towards higher goals, you may face difficulties, but you should be able to still go with fortitude, even if you have difficulties on the way. The ability to set higher goals, your capability to set higher goals and strive towards it. The attitude of unconditional performance of duties and following a simple living and high thinking style is austerity, and being focused, single pointed in your pursuit of the higher goal. So that is austerity, which is a sattvic austerity. So sattvic austerity is performance of the austerities of action, words, and thoughts. The triple austerities of action, words, and thoughts without any selfish motives and with complete focus and faith. The results are great and lasting. Lasting peace and tranquility will be the result. Similarly, on the other extreme end is the tamasic tapas. These are generally performed through bizarre rituals, often amounting to self-torture and ignorance. Generally, it is aimed at getting the better of others or even for destroying others, etc. So, the extreme ends of the austerities are described here with rajas in between, for gaining reputation, honor, reverence in society, and looking at results, driven by results. So in actions, in thoughts and words, in action, sattvic tapas, self-denial for self-control, fasting for obtaining purity of mind, keeping tidy surroundings and being clean, being straightforward, self-controlled, and non-violent in actions is sattvic tapas in action. The sattvic tapas in word is thinking before talking, pleasing, gentle, kind, truthful, and well-meaning speech and conversations, appropriate and legitimate talk, no loose talk, etc. Dealing on concepts, noble thoughts, and elevating experiences, thinking, reflecting on knowledge, etc. Writing, righteousness, compassion, non-offending speeches, dignified speech, etc. Study and recital of scriptures. And sattvic tapas at the mind level, in thought, a contemplative countenance, meaning, you always are in a state connecting with the joys of the self and thinking about peaceful things, compassionate things, and very serene in appearance and in demeanor. Smiling demeanor, being always a well-wisher. So that kind of a positive aura is generated out of sattvic tapas at the thought level. Rajasic tapas, actions aimed purely for gaining self-assurance, actions aimed at recognition and name in society, talking in haste, aggression, manipulative and scheming, self-praise, own enjoyments, selfish enjoyments is what drives you, successes, criticism of others, argumentative, angry and volatile personality, restlessness in general, agitated and complaining. So this is the way your actions become your nature. The Rajasic Shraddha driving you to become a person of these kind of characteristics. Tamasic Shraddha will drive you to self-denial, self-torturing through ignorance, non-conformance to scriptural injunctions, acting without thinking, harsh, sarcastic words, abusive language, gossip, loose talk, dull, crooked, and cruel, agitated, and agitates others. So these are the kind of results of austerities performed through these three kinds of tendencies. Similarly, charities are also defined as sattvic, tamasic, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic described here with three arrows. I will describe that. For example, charity that is given in the right place and time as a matter of duty to a deserving candidate. So these characteristics have been to be very clearly understood, because if any one of them is not there, it does not become sattvic. At the right place and time, as a matter of duty to a deserving candidate, and without any expectations in return to somebody who cannot return, is considered to be in the mode of goodness. So you can give charity to others with the expectation that, sometime later they will give it back. Then it is not, even if you are helping, it is not sattvic. With the mindset that, you are doing this because later on I will be helped. If you have that mind's attitude, then it becomes rajasic charity. Even that should not be there. And, something that is, or something given to somebody with which who that cannot return this help. Such sacrifices, that is called as charity. And so it is one directional, going out from you only. And that which is given with a view to getting something in return, or looking for a fruit, the karma balam, looking for karma bala, or reluctantly, sometimes you do it reluctantly. That gift is held to be in the mode of rajas. And then there is this tamasic charity. Tamasic charity are that given at wrong place and wrong time to wrong people, without paying respect to the receiver or with ridicule. That is tamasic charity. So characteristics are all defined in these verses 20, 21, and 22. Okay, so with that, even if you do not know the injunctions of the script, suppose you do not know about these injunctions, you have not studied Bhagavad-Gita, nobody has talked to you about all these things. How can you make, still you can do food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity, the four things, sattvic. Even if you don't know anything, how can you make food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity sattvic? Is basically what Arjuna wanted to know, and Krishna is now going to address that. First, as a summary, this is it. Food, worship, charity, and austerity, in this way. That is food, all sensory experiences. As I said, all the Panchendriyas, food for thought and reflective engagements to gather knowledge. Everything is to gain knowledge of the higher order with value systems set at higher value systems. Driven by higher value systems. Whatever you gather, that is food in sattvic food. Worship, acts of sacrifice and practices that help cultivate and nourish our inner potentials. Anything that you do to raise yourself by your own self. Uddaret atmanatmanam. Charity, all acts done in service of others. Whatever you do, you should always have that litmus test. Is it going to help at least one another person other than me? The more, the better. Keep on doing that. That is sattvic. You don't have to know anything, any other philosophical scriptures or anything. You just have to be driven by this practical thing. Austerity, fine-tuning of action, speech, and thought to maximize self-potential. Keep on doing that, Think, control your action, control your speech, and control your thinking. So, it is said that every action, be it sacrifice, charity, or austerity, when carried out with the remembrance of one thing, that is what Gita is now teaching. That is what is going to be described. I will explain that in detail. And that sloga also. But before that, I am going to go into the practical mode now. Service as selfless sacrifice. That you don't have to understand what karma yoga is, what bhakti yoga is, what jnana yoga is, or whatever. Nothing. What atman is, what self is, nothing is required. All you need to understand is that service is a selfless sacrifice. Three things. Service, whatever you do to help others, should be selfless, and it should be done sacrificing something. Service as selfless sacrifice. That is the only thing that should be driving your food, worship, charity, and austerities. Okay. Now, sacrifice is the real goodness of required in the transaction transactionary world. Transitionary, it is not transitionary, but transactionary world. In the world in which we deal with people, outside elements, societies, with people, with things, with teams, with organizations, etc. Sacrifice is one thing that make you a good person. Okay, that is the practical understanding that we should gain from this. Sacrifice is real goodness. One. Second, selflessness is the universal characteristic. Selflessness is what makes this universe sustainable. That we have seen previously also. Coexistence and expansion is what drives this universe. Otherwise, planets will be crashing against each other, and there will be nothing left in this universe. It will be a chaotic universe. So selflessness is the universal characteristics. That actually will drive you in the first one, sacrifices, making sacrifices. If you want to make sacrifices, it should be driven by selflessness. And universe derives from the infinitude. So you can actually trace the sacrifice within each one of us is because of the universal formula of selflessness, which actually came from the universe. Can you understand that? Universe, Brahman, and from the Brahman came the universe. And what are the forces that rule the universe? Selflessness. Because there is motion, rhythm, control, etc. in the universe. So that is basically an expression of selflessness. Philosophers have defined it as the expression of selflessness. So universe came about from the infinitude. And selflessness is what the universe inherited from the Brahman. So the universe actually inherits that unique property of Brahman, infinite, which is sacrifice. That is basically what it talks about. Therefore, all our actions should be done as service. In selfless sacrifice is the message that Krishna gave, or Bhagavad-Gita gives in chapter 17, Shraddha, Traya, Vibhaga Yoga. That is sattvic food, sattvic worship, sattvic charity, and sattvic austerity, driven by the sattvic nature. We will see that verse, how Krishna describes it in Sanskrit. We will see that later. But before that, what I am going to go through is food, austerities, charity, and sacrifices. I am going to talk about in practical sense. Food. Avoid interaction with the environment that help cultivate or enhance passionate and selfish thoughts and actions. Think about it. Okay, this is some practical statements that I am making, which I am sure you will all be able to connect. So, interaction with the environment is called as food through the senses and the mind. That is food. Anything that you actually take in, interacting with the outside world and take in, is food. That food should not cultivate or enhance passionate and selfish thoughts. The rajasic, it should not be rajasic. And those that also should not kindle and destructive thoughts and actions, tamasic. So do not take in rajasic food or tamasic food. Always eat sattvic food. So it is, think about it, and Gita is not talking about taking sattvic food. Means it is not about this eating, the kind of things that we eat in. There are various other things through eye, through nose, through ears, etc. that we take in. So all of this is encompassed in the definition of food. So don't take in rajasic food and don't consume tamasic food. Which means that it is about choosing the right environment. We have to choose and shape our environment. Books, entertainment sources, friendships, neighborhood, gadgets, our networks, cooperative teamwork, and organizational savviness. Understanding. Sometimes, we may not be able to choose the kind of organization, but you should be able to understand the organization etiquettes and go through those things. So this choosing the right environment is about consuming the right food. Means choose the right environment. So in a nutshell, you can say, okay, sattvic food. What does it mean? It means choosing the right environment in your life. Okay. One of those aspects I'm going to, like for example, taking appropriate network, appropriate, connections in living, in maybe it's in professional lives, maybe it's in family social circles, but networking is a key characteristics that we talk about. And even in the modern management parlance, networking has been defined in various ways and described, which is nothing but Krishna's definition of sattvic shraddha in food, austerities, actions, etc. So I will actually go through this appropriate networking characteristics, some of the aspects of appropriate networking in the professional world. So some of you who are interested in actually can connect with that. It is about networking is about proactively developing. See, this is the modern definition, and this encompasses these sattvic aspects that Krishna was talking about of the environment and your connections with it. Proactively developing dependable pathways. Your connections should be dependable. Dependable pathways to what? That is important. Knowledge experts who can actually give you sattvic food of knowledge, who can help complete critical path tasks. Somebody who can actually guide you through knowledge, through expertise. You can also connect with other kind of people who can distract you from all this, and then it is not sattvic. Not only that, when called upon, you should be also able to share knowledge, give out that kind of food to others. And in general, it is about minimizing knowledge deficit in any thought-powered jobs. So that is how networking is defined. Okay. I'm just giving you as a sample only. We are not going to deliberate on it much further because this is a part of our self-analytics program that we do for youth. So you should understand who is who you connect with. Do not easily succumb to the feeling of ignorance. Should be proactive and not wait for a need to arise. And you should also become stars such that people would want to connect with you. Okay. That is, in general, knowing who knows by plugging into the knowledge network. That is all. That is what networking is. So, pathways to knowledge sources, faster networks, adding value to network, giving away proactively, respecting others and not abusing networks, never plagiarizing, management. You should also know that these knowledge networks are not controlled by management. They are controlled by experts, domain experts. Stars rise through networks. So these are the things that you should understand when you are making connections within your professional work groups. You should also understand that there are very many informal networks in an organization. Like for example, when you join an organization, people give you a organizational chart. There is probably the directors, the CEO, and then department heads and managers, and then specific people who work in specific project tasks, etc. So that is the general organizational network that everyone talks about and everyone tells you about. It is displayed, etc. But that is not what really defines your success. Your success is defined by your knowledge about the informal networks within the organization. There are people who are very, very powerful and key people in a specific area of domain, and you need to connect with them and not with the formal administrative hierarchy. Administrative hierarchies are just for the sake of administration, but the real power lies in the informal networks. That is the nervous system of the organization, and you should be able to understand, connect with it, and become part of it. So that's basically what we have been talking about. I mean, like that, for example, this is an advice network that people, for example, this is a standard diagrams that I have taken. A particular person is connected by a lot of other people, meaning if you look at this diagram itself, you will know the important people in the organization, in the team. Can you tell me who is the most important, a couple of people in this, two or three people who are very, very important in this network? By looking at this diagram, it is very clear. Anyone want to volunteer to identify a couple of people who are very, very important in this organization? By looking at this graphic, we will be able to tell that. Anyone volunteering?
It's already there in the chat box.
Okay. Calder and Harris. Yes, absolutely. Calder and Harris. In that order, actually speaking. Calder and Harris. Divya Mathur has written there. Okay. Calder and Harris are the two most powerful people in this organization. They need not be in the administrative hierarchy at the top. They are there because of the knowledge that they possess and share. So if we are able to understand this, that knowledge is food for our progress. And also, what should be our, we should actually be striving to work towards the goals of the organization such that we also become such nodes. Similarly, there are other types of importance that we can acquire, if not the central node. There are some people who are like D and who are like H. The D-like people are Calder and Harris that we talked about. And there are also sometimes people like H. They may not have too many pointers coming to them, connecting, but they actually reside on the peripheries, connecting people from the outside world to the team. They actually bridge the betweenness between two sources of knowledge. They bridge social capital, maybe. They bridge structural holes. They control information. They are the best predictor of power and access to non. So these kind of characteristics are there. So what of course, this is not a networking class, so I will not go further into it. But just to give you this importance of actual, knowledge and your environment and how you create that environment through the power of networking. Knowledge deficit has to be plugged. Networking speed of speeding up the critical path is important. I think we have discussed sometime in one of the Karma Yoga sessions also. If you have right connections, your progress will be faster, especially in thought-powered jobs. When you are working in multidisciplinary domains of expertise and you are not an expert in everything, but you are required to do certain things that actually require you to know about something that you do not know. Then you need to connect with the experts, and the experts, if you know directly, then it is fast. Otherwise, you have to go through media, people in between people, and then lose time. So speed of networking, speed of the moving through the critical path is important. And we should also cultivate these habits of the stars. We should understand that, getting help from others, if you want to get help from others, you should also be ready to give help to others. It is a barter system. Everywhere in the outside transactional world, it is always going to be a barter system. Understand that. And therefore, what is best required is when you start in an organization, during initial days, whether you are, a rookie professional, or even if experienced people move to other organizations, change organizations, etc., the best approach would be to always start giving proactively. Don't wait for getting help from somebody to give them help, but start helping others as much as possible. Look out for opportunities, grab the opportunities and help other people. That is the best investment for getting help whenever you are in trouble. You should also make sure that you are in the right team, right connections. Always, it is like catching a cold. There is something called as catching a cold. cold, is something that you just like that catch. It's very easy to catch a cold. Many a times we must have also experienced that suddenly, you are okay at 10 o'clock, but at 11 o'clock, you suddenly start sneezing because you have cap. It's so easy. It is like this, bad habits. Dusangam. Bad habit, bad negativities are like bad cold. You move, for example, 11 o'clock, you move out to the cafeteria for a cup of coffee. There are 3 or 4 people who always move about. And then in the cafeteria, the talk is always negative, gossiping and, bad things about various other people. If you find yourself in such a trend, make sure that you get out of it. Don't repeat that. Don't fall for it, because that negativity you will easily catch. So, weed and seed, proactive one-way trading, always give, start giving. And, various other networking etiquettes from the critical path. The etiquettes are there always. If you want to get help from somebody, you have to seek appointment, give notice and ask for help, and then go, don't barge in, etc. All those, small things are, etiquettes are there, not going into details again here. And so such networking approaches, traditional, direct dropping by, and then by dropping by unannounced, it is bad. You have to announce. Emailing, getting, prior appointments, or taking reference and going and meeting other people is best always. And widening your learning opportunities for everyone, and it should not limit you. Keep learning. There is an Arab proverb which says, the best possible situation in life is to know that you know. The second best is to know that you do not know. And the third is to not know that you do not know. The worst is to not know that you do not know. Okay. This is an Arab proverb. This is something that should always be driving us. Okay, so that is food, cultivation of the right networking food. Then worship, cultivate a sense of duty. What is worship? Cultivating a sense of duty to perform obligatory and rightful work. Daily and occasional duties should be performed with this sense of duty also. Strategies for success, sustainable success, leading to full actualization of our inner capabilities. That is what worship is all about in the outside world. So adopt the right strategies, right initiative, taking right initiatives, developing your perspectives. Developing the right perspectives is important. That was highlighted in chapter 10 and chapter 11. In fact, all these chapters up to 10, up to 9 was done for that. Your perspective about your own self as universal, as imperishable and infinite, followed by, the Vibhuti Darshanam. That actually helped Arjuna to see the multitudinal form of the self, the divinity, which is Vishwarupa Darshana. So developing that right perspectives of multi-dimensional nature of the self and of the implications in life is very important. So I actually look at that in the kind of, applied, application of this knowledge in life, in professions, for example, would be something like this. Developing perspective in our work world. Challenge what is known and look at new options. That is a perspective that you should develop. Challenging what is already known. Don't take it that it is already okay. It is everybody does that, so let me also do it. But look at it critically and see if it can be improved. And look at new options. So same rules, new rules, same game, new game is the metrics that you should look at. So, and look at this. So, can you see the pointer? Okay. Same rule, same game. If you keep on doing, you will be average, only average. There is a rule, there are things that people do, and I will also keep doing that. To the best of my abilities, I will do it. Doesn't matter, I don't improve it, I don't become better, I don't find new ways, I don't find newer things to do, etc. I keep doing my things to the best of my abilities, and then think that, why am I not promoted? Why am I not giving the increments and bonuses that that others are getting? That kind of thought plagues everyone. Why? Because you are applying same rules to the same game. So you are only average. But even if you are playing the same game, can you actually start playing with new rules? Do the same thing, but do it differently. Do it different through different processes, etc. Trying to find out better ways of doing things. That is new rules. Same game, new rules. Same game and new game. New rules. That is this one. Same game, new rules. You become the highest performer in the organization. So this is how you have to shift. The perspective has to develop. If you can develop these perspectives, then you will slowly go into the stardom state. So same game, same rule, new rule, metrics, if you have it in mind, and then try whatever you are doing, apply this rule. Do not keep yourself doing the same game with the same set of rules. You will be average. You have to migrate. That is what should power you. And for that, you have to develop multiple perspectives. You have to look around and see the world like Arjuna did. Arjuna was given as a practical demonstration of the perspectives of self by Krishna. Look at that, look at this, look at the opportunities everywhere for you to excel. So in an organization, we have to develop the 5 C's. The perspective, customer perspective, the company perspective, the competitor perspective, the colleague perspective, and the creative dissonance perspective. I'm sure the first 4 are very clear. I don't have to go through that. I'll just mention about the 5th one, not in detail, but just creative dissonance is the capability that you need to develop in doing things by looking at new and innovative ways of doing things in other fields and trying to mimic that in your particular area of expertise, in your particular work. That capability to see creativity, to actually invoke creativity by looking the commonality in differences is called as creative dissonance. Like, for example, Wright brothers, when the aircraft was not flying more than 100 yards or 100 meters or something, they knew that it's a problem with the wings. And then they saw eagles in flight and saw the efficiency with which the eagle was flying. And therefore, they started studying the structure of the eagle's wings and then tried to copy the characteristics that they found in the eagle's wing, in the design of aircraft wings, and succeeded. So they tried to connect things in nature with this. And that is creative dissonance. Being able to notice things in the outside world, in nature, from some things that are not at all connected with what you are doing, but yet find commonalities such that you can then convert that commonalities into an action process in your current work. That is creative dissonance. So stars move in faster before others realize it. But if you are able to do this move from same market to new market or same product to new product, etc., the first one who takes this chain, successfully does this, becomes the star in their organization. It is all about developing your brain in terms of knowledge, the storing of that knowledge and connecting with it in the right perspectives. In fact, learning is a process of just connecting like that. And, it's about your mind is a collection of concepts, concept A, concept B, etc. And each concept within you is powered by different ideas. In fact, different ideas brought together one concept A. Different set of ideas brought together your concept of B. And different ideas brought your concept of C, etc. So this is how you build up concepts in your mind. And when different concepts are connected together, that is what is called as creative dissonance. That is the process of, the first is the process of learning, and the second is the process of creative thinking or creative dissonance. It is like, your neurons, they connect when you learn something. When you learn something, they get connected. And then when you practice it, think about it and practice it, they become thicker and thicker. And the connections become thicker. Similarly, and then it becomes your habit. That is basically what Krishna talked about in the beginning itself, as that when you start practicing things, it becomes your nature. This is how your habits become a nature, your nature. Sattvic habits become sattvic nature, like you're repeatedly practicing it. Because the brain is a device that helps you to become better at it through practice and only practice. There is no other way. Similarly, you have different such concepts, different value systems, different sattvic traits that you develop, and it becomes a sattvic brain, and they connect together. It becomes creative dissonance, coming up with newer ideas, newer ways of living, etc. That is understanding. Connecting these things is called as understanding, and you are such collections of concepts. And when suddenly two concepts get fired through deep reflection, you have creative dissonance. They connect, and the brain neurons get connected, and you have suddenly, yes, you see light. And that is creative dissonance, which is the root of innovation. So these are some of the things that we keep on experiencing, and this is basically how any habit, any trait, any knowledge, any concept that is to be developed, and all these processes that are described in the Gita is also applicable to knowledge acquisition, successful practice in the outside world in a sustainable way, helping others as sacrifice. So these are all done there. It is because we are powered by the Atman as consciousness within, and that consciousness needs to focus. It is like this, in the darkness, you don't see anything. But when suddenly you light up some areas in that dark room, your consciousness is able to comprehend that what is happening. I see this cupboard, but when I actually show the light on into a different corner of the room, I see the pictures hanging on the wall. And that way, now when I see both, I know what is there in that room. When full light dawns, you see everything in that room. Otherwise, you are only seeing bits and elements and then seeing that, that is what I'm conscious of, and you get limited. Instead, you need to expand through the light of knowledge. That light of knowledge is what Jnana Yoga is teaching us, so that our consciousness expands to comprehend the whole. The self is the whole. We are otherwise seeing only a little bit of it. My mind power is only this cupboard. My intellect power is it is only this photos. My sensory power is that dining table. But I am actually composed, this room, I am composed of all these things and much more, like the teapot there. So that expansion can happen only if we actually direct the torchlight into various things. Through knowledge, you gain the light of knowledge. So similarly, we can actually develop the next aspect, which is charity. Services must be carried out without any eye on the returns and should be aimed at the deserving and the needy. All acts of being service to others, teams, organizations, or a community should be proactive. Don't wait for you to get help, but start giving without any preconditions or selfish benefits. Giving and giving up should not be based on what benefits are expected. Sattvic charity. Austerities, knowledge can only be gained through love and action. Only through rigorous practice you can develop knowledge and the right motivations and attitudes to work That is sattvic austerity, to help develop devotion in what you do, which in turn will kindle knowledge. Okay, so I'm coming back to the Gita stanza that actually went, made me deviate into the practical aspects. Cultivating the perspective of recognizing. Okay, it is a slightly, difficult statement written here. Cultivating the perspective of recognizing the reality of the transacting world as the reality, whatever you see in the outside world, the real thing, the physical things that you see in the world, reality of the physical transacting world, what you sense with the senses, senses, the sense objects that you sense with the senses, the reality of the transacting world. As that is what is that? It is based on the universal phenomena. It is universe that we are seeing, aspects of universe that we are seeing, which that universe is coming from the absolute, is derived from the absolute, the infinite. If you have that perspective always, that Shraddha in your mind, the sattvic Shraddha, that is what is sattvic Shraddha. And that sattvic Shraddha, if it is powering your mind, it gives us the true perspective of the seamlessness of the web of life. So, that is the reason why we need to be reminded of this connection between the real, that is what we actually see in the outside world as goodness of the real, that is Sat. The universe is that which is everywhere, which we physically see. And the absolute is the Om, the infinite. In all walks of life, gives meaning and fullness to life. That is what Gita defines. So it says that sacrifice is the real goodness, selflessness is the universal characteristics, and the universe derives from the infinite. That is basically the meaning of Sat, Tat, and Om in all walks of life. So how do you actually reflect that? It is described in 1723. Om Tat Sat Idi Nirdesho Brahmanas Trividas Smrta. That is, Om, Tat, and Sat is the triple designation of the infinite. So Krishna says that Om Tat Sat is how you designate the infinitude, the Brahman. Om Tat Sat. By these were goodness, knowledge, and sacrifices of all created. So that is the reason why whenever you engage in any action, any auspicious action, reflected in the mantras that we chant in auspicious occasion, etc., are also designed like this. That when you utter that, ultimately at the end you will say Om Tat Sat. We say Om Tat Sat. We are taught to reflect on Om Tat Sat at the end of every mantra or every piece of activity, which means that in anything that you engage in this transactory world, you should always have in your mind Om Tat Sat. That whatever you are doing, whatever you are thinking should be connected to Om. Whatever goodness you are doing in this society, that should be part of the universal balance that we need to keep, and that it derives from the infinite. That knowledge, that faith, that Shraddha should always be there in all our actions, is what 1723 summarizes. Every action produces a result. The fruit depends not just on the action, but also on the purity of intentions and motivations that we possess within our minds. The Shraddha with which we actually do the action is very important. Shraddha, which talks about the purity of intentions and motivations and the attitudes. They combine together. Karma Yoga and the Bhakti Yoga combine together with the knowledge of the infinite in all our actions. Then the quality shapes sattvic actions in the world. So The quality of intentions shapes the nature of the results of the action is basically what you should understand. Every action, be it sacrifice, be it charity, be it austerity, when carried out with the remembrance of Om Tat Sat, becomes pure, sattvic. So just one stanza here describes the whole application of Bhagavad-Gita in life. So when actually, if we need to know that just by chanting this or reciting this sloka, you may not really know the implications of all this unless and until you have gone through all these chapters and understood the strategies of action, attitudes, aptitudes, fortitude, focus of the mind, and your qualities of devotion, because you understand and connect with the self. And then you realize that the goodness that you bring about in this world is in tune with the universal values of selflessness and that which derives from the infinite. Therefore, Om Tat Sat is that culmination of your identity, your Shraddha of the Brahman in all your thoughts and actions. This is signified by the triple designation Om, the transcendental absolute, the supreme, Tat, the universal truth, the universal, and Sat, the reality of goodness, the real. Om Tat Sat. Om, to invoke the divine concept of absolute infinitude, is to free our personality. What does it imply? When you say Om, when you connect with Om, it implies that you are connecting yourself with the infinitude. You are immediately plugging yourself out of the limitations of the body, mind, and intellect. Because I am infinite. Tat indicates oneness with all these creatures of the universe. Selflessness. No ego, cutting away your ego. That is Tat. And Sat indicates reality, faith, and goodness. It's the goodness of your actions for the welfare of everything. Getting out of the limitations of the body, mind, and intellect is Om Tat Sat. Therefore, with the utterance of Om, are the sacrifices, gifts, and austerity to be enjoined. Uttering Tat without the aiming of the fruits. Uttering Sat in the sense of reality of goodness. Devotion to sacrifice, austerity, and charity is spoken of as Sat, and when action is connected with these is called as Sat. That is what Sat is all about, doing goodness. So ultimately, this is the message that Bhagavad-Gita gives us. Mindset of sacrifice is the reflection of infinitude. In the sense, when you are powered by a mindset of sacrifice, that means you are actually now tapping infinitude. You become infinite. The moment your mind is sacrifice oriented, you are now resonating the infinitude within you. Every act of selfless sacrifice is therefore divine. And such actions are auspicious and they are good. They are Sat. This is devotion at its, and it is true existence. And this is the meaning of existence. So whatever is sacrificed, given or done, and whatever austerity is practiced without such faith is called as asat. That is how Krishna stops this chapter. The ultimate faith, therefore, is I am infinite. Ultimate faith, power. This is the Shraddha that should actually power us. That I am the infinite. I am one with all. And it is, whatever I do is pouring of my devotion for the infinite. If we are able to actually do this, even in small things that we do, like as I said, in networking, in teamwork, in taking initiatives, etc., then you have the ultimate, you are powered by the ultimate faith. You are living the life of Gita intelligence. If you are able to take strands of this message into your small things that you do, think and act, then that is what your nature should be. That is what the Sattvic Shraddha is all about. So with that, I will end this chapter with the concluding mantra, and then we can discuss. I know that there are certain things that probably be very difficult to grasp initially, but I will be posting this and you can reflect on it. And this is the ultimate shaping of the mind, the Shraddha, that Krishna gives in a very nutshell, Om Tat Sat. And that Om Tat Sat we should understand as the belief, the faith, the strong faith that I am infinite. I am one with all. And that it is all my thoughts and actions are pouring of devotion for that.